Hi, everyone, and welcome to another extended version of SQM Picks. I'm David Lipton. For those of you new to SQM Picks, our company SQM first started a blog several years ago to highlight businesses that provide outstanding customer service. Businesses that have been featured range from small mom and pop companies to some of the larger international brands. Highlighted companies come from a number of different industries, including restaurants, retail stores, medical offices, lawyers, and various tourist attractions. We've even featured an auto body shop and a junkyard in the blogs, which just goes to prove that any businesses can provide outstanding service. Our guest today is Jamie Clarke, who can best be described as an adventurer, expedition leader, author, motivational speaker, entrepreneur, husband, father, and owner of Jamie Clarke Enterprises. I'm not sure if I got the enterprises correct, but close enough here. I first met Jamie a number of years ago when we were young lads after his first successful expedition to the top of Mount Everest. Note that I said successful, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. Jamie, welcome to SQM Picks.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, we'll get to the adventures in a minute. Tell us a little bit about your business, what I call Jamie Clarke Enterprises. Where are you located and what exactly do you do these days?
Sure. Well, thanks for the invite to join you and chat a little bit, but without being too self-promotional, which will make anybody throw up in their mouth, which is different from outstanding service. I'm always grappling with that confidence in what you do without arrogance, right? That confidence in what you can do without pushing it too far. So I'm an entrepreneur and have been my whole life. Live here in Calgary, where I was born and raised in Western Canada, and had various jobs that I've worked in and worked on, in and on, as you know, the entrepreneurial myth, to varying degrees of success, depending on how you define success. And right now, in my late 50s, most of my time is occupied with work that I do, maybe not unlike work yourself, where I'm working with companies. I hate to say it as a consultant, because that can sometimes be a bit loaded and tricky. I'd rather, be a ninja, so go in and do a bunch of work and then get out of there, because most companies have all the wisdom they need and they don't need to get wrapped up with somebody from the outside. So I try to be a consulting ninja of sorts, really around performance, team performance, how to perform our best when it matters most, which seems like in business almost every day. And how do teams in particular come together and pursue that lifelong path that is leadership. I wish it was a one and done, but it's this ongoing, never ending thing. How to be a good leader, how to be a good human being. And you may not have the title or the tenure for it, but that doesn't matter, because we're all leaders in one way or the other. And it ties in beautifully to your opening monologue there about everybody has an opportunity to be outstanding in offering service, whether that's as an employee 1740404, or someone really on the front line. So that resonates with what you're talking about. But that's in a nutshell, too much blah blah for me, what I'm up to. So I travel
Oh,
around speaking and consulting and working with clients all over North America.
interesting. So, when I first met you the first time, when I first met you, this from the Department of Redundancy Department. When I met you the first time, it was when my business partner Craig had heard about you and your adventures and took all the staff out to Hamilton, even though we're based in Toronto. We chartered a bus and went out to Hamilton for dinner and heard you speak to a much larger group. That was, I think, after the first time that you successfully reached the top, or is it summit, Mount Everest. Whatever led you to choose to climb Mount Everest in the first place?
Well, probably some deep-seated inadequacy that I was trying to make up for. A great question. I guess it's nuanced, and there's lots of little reasons, and it's interesting when you reflect on these things that you can come up with maybe a more idealized assessment of what it was. But in the best of my memory, I grew up in Calgary, 60 kilometers, 60 miles, 100 kilometers from some of the, I can see them right out my window right here, some of the most impressive mountains on the planet. So that geography, that proximity was hugely powerful. It informed, I think, my existence. Had we lived on the ocean, I think surfing would have captured my mind or heart as much, or maybe even more. Surfing's pretty cool compared
Love
to all.
surfing.
Yeah. So I guess there was that element, my geography. Then my older brother was a voracious reader, and he was a hero of mine as a kid. He traveled a lot, fresh out of high school. That inspired me, made me think about the world as a whole. The books that he read, I might get my hands on them. They were, Wilbur Smith type stuff, but it was my mom who planted some adventure books. So I had an early exposure to adventure, and in particular mountains, because of the geography, and I guess a little bit of an imagination and some curiosity was mixed in there too. If these are these mountains, well, what are some of the world's highest mountains? And it didn't take you long to sort of stumble upon the Alps and get up into Alaska, and then poke around with the family's encyclopedia. And next thing you know, you end up in the Himalaya, and you're dragging your finger through the maps in Nepal and Tibet, and what's this thing that Mount Everest? And that captured my imagination. And I was more fascinated with the place than ever thought I'd ever climb it. It just seemed too beyond one's reach. But small seed planted, small steps taken, the classic cliche of progress. One thing led to another. And I think probably before I talked myself out of it, which often comes as we get a little smarter and a little older and a little risk adverse, the seed had taken root and the dream was there. And then it was a relentless, dogged determination, just banging my head against the wall and not willing to give up.
Now, we're going to come to the risk averse topic in a little bit, but if I recall, you didn't make it to the top of Mount Everest the first time, did you?
No, not by any chance. Really, the first time I was on a team, I wasn't really even slated to climb on the mountain. I was there in a role of service. Of course, my ego and ambition would have thought otherwise, but you can't, I don't think, I guess you can do lots of things today, but there's something about paying your dues, not because you have to pay your dues. That's the way we did it. You'll suffer too, but more so about learning the nuances of things in the Himalaya. That might be a weather pattern, just understanding the cultural differences, how to communicate and connect, how to get things done instead of bullying your way through. And you can read about it. You could even watch today, a fabulous piece of video or content, or jump on the interwebs that we are, and learn a tremendous amount. But there's nothing that can replace that in-person experience, even artificially fired up with intelligence or otherwise. Just, you got to smell it, you have to taste it, I think. And so those early trips for me, I was just thrilled beyond belief to be part of it. Now, I wanted to be part of a winner, wanted to be part of an expedition that succeeded and didn't. And I'm not trying to let myself off the hook here, but I just want to make it clear. I wasn't heading to the mountain in the first time in my early 20s in the 1990s thinking, I'm going to go and climb. No, I was thinking, I'm going to go there and build a latrine to support the team. It's going to be a beauty with a great view. I'm going to do the grunt work here. And that's how things sort of progressed. And then I went back the second time, years later, and still didn't make it. And then I was involved in the climbing at that point. And that was, what's that famous saying from Tyson? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. That's the real beauty about doing things. Until you get socked in the mouth and taste your own blood, you don't really have a sense of what's going on. And although it's terrible at the time, my gosh, it's awesome in its memory, as long as it doesn't give you a concussion and knock all your teeth out and you fall to the ground. If you survive. And that really whet my appetite in a more realistic way about what the undertaking required. And then, as you point out, it was the third time, 3 years later, again, deeper into my career with more maturity and understanding, that I think we were able to pull things together. And a modicum of luck, too. Let's never think that success is just entirely earned. I think sometimes it's opportunity presented and then you capitalize on it.
So, you mentioned it, and I'm going to actually combine maybe two of the topics, two of the questions that I was thinking about asking you here. I can't imagine you wake up one day and decide to climb the tallest mountain on Earth without some planning. And I was going to ask you, what do you do to plan to prepare, dare I say, for a project like this? But I know from hearing you speak and reading your books, you also tie the idea of the adventures and climbing a mountain with some of the motivational speaking that you do for businesses. What are the skills? What do you have to plan for both climbing a mountain and for improving, developing, growing a business?
Mm. Well, If you'd asked me a while ago, I would say there aren't very many overlaps or parallels, but just through life itself and being something of an entrepreneur myself, you made mention of retail. I ran a retail store with my team here in Calgary for 14 years. We had an 8,000 square foot bricks and mortar shop, a little MEC in Canada as we know them, or an REI as the people in America know them in the States. And I learned a ton. We had secret shoppers and staff, and boy, my life savings was tied up on those walls and inventory and down jackets and so forth. And it wasn't until I did that that I really began to understand the parallels. I had understood a bit through the fundraising efforts because one of my primary jobs in those early expeditions was raise the money. There's so many great climbers who had such incredible talent that climb circles around me. I was often desperate to try to figure out how I could contribute. Being it just purely a great climber seemed beyond my grasp, and no one would really pay much attention to me. But if I could be good at climbing as well as the business of adventure, well, then maybe I could, kind of bundle up my mediocrity into something unique. And I'm not being falsely modest. I really do think that's the case of it. As a business person unto itself, pretty mediocre. As a mountain climber unto itself, pretty mediocre. I can function in the field, but there's just so much incredible business and climbing talent. Now, if I could do both of those together reasonably well, okay, maybe we're onto something. And I saw that uniqueness was really something that I was looking for by a creativity around mediocrity. And that's pretty inspiring because there are so many talented people who think, well, how am I going to get ahead? I don't have the context. I don't have the relationships. I don't have the funds. The list of what we don't have or what we lack or why we can't do something is huge, especially if we sit down and actually try to build it. We'll just get overwhelmed. Okay, let's keep that in mind. Now, what do I have or what could I look at what I have that access to or could I build that's unique? And that's really where I saw it. So I raised the money for the teams and then I launched the business. And then through all of that, now this is years. We're not talking about, a podcast. Next thing you know how to do all this stuff. Those help, but it's no fast track. Then I began to see the transferable skills. And over time and to this day, there isn't one that goes by that I don't, stand sort of simultaneously with a climbing boot on the side of a mountain and a cheap loafer in a boardroom and, bounce back and forth between those two because there are transferable skills. Not everything, albeit not everything. That's why life experience is so powerful because the broad experience that we have, there is transferable skill. It informs how a parent I am, hopefully what kind of a son I am, what kind of member of the community I am, hopefully what kind of a human being I am. It certainly informs what kind of a leader. So, blah, blah, blah. To answer your question, I guess one of the fundamental principles, and I say up front, I guess I don't really guess, speaking of redundancy, but you got to be careful with hubris thinking, well, this is how it is, because it's always new, it's nuanced and complicated. But I would argue pretty passionately that leadership is not something you're born with. It isn't some innate ability. It's learned behavior. And every one of us has a responsibility, I think, to embark on that journey. Even if you're like, oh, I'm not much of a leader. I don't want those roles. Yeah, somebody's watching. Your family's watching. Your peers are watching. Your friends are watching. You're leading. What do you do? And leadership is really about behavior because it's your behavior that informs your character. And it's your character that displays your leadership, and it's your leadership through the course of your life that will shape your legacy and your contribution and your way of making the world a better place. That's kind of how I see it all rolled up. So whether you're on the side of a mountain or in a boardroom or you're punching a clock and going to work, whatever it happens to be, you're a leader. And therefore, what kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of behavior? When the alarm goes off in the morning, do you swing your feet to the floor or do you hit snooze? So I think it starts right there. And maybe that the only promise you made there was to yourself. It wasn't because of a deadline. You had to catch a plane or go drive the bus or something. You made a decision the night before that you want to get up a little early and do some reading or maybe meditate or just have a little more time to plan a proper breakfast. And you set the alarm and the alarm went off. What would you do? Snooze it or swing your feet to the floor? Bam, leadership, behavior. So I guess that, we could talk about this for hours, but that to me is really where the grit of it is. How do you want to lead your life? And then you can start bundling other things on top of that. The next layer I'd say is about courage. Really ultimately about courage, because you can have all that leadership skill, but if you can't cultivate the courage to execute, well, then it's just dreams and ideas and hopes. And those are entertaining in the moment, but a curse in the long run. So then it's how do you become courageous? And I guess ultimately again, I don't think that's an innate ability. I believe it's learned. You can become more courageous. I think we're fundamentally more courageous than we think in many cases. I'm not talking about heroics. not talking about, ridiculous risk taking. I'm talking about that slow burn of, stepping more fully and completely into your life. The kind of courage to have a tough conversation, the courage to put your hand up, the courage to speak, the courage to say no to an opportunity, even though it might be seductive, because the short-term gain isn't worth the long-term sacrifice. All that stuff. And I guess those, and I'll shut up and let you keep going. It's your podcast after all. But I think those are the elements at its base that you can lift transferable skills. The idea of leadership as a whole, and then cultivating courage to complement the two. When you put that together, now you're onto something.
Well, listen, you saved me asking one of the other questions about a couple of the more the key skills. So you saved me doing that, so you could babble on as much as you want. I do have a question that I never asked when I sent you a list of questions, and I'm kind of curious. You said that you were a mediocre climber. Some people always tell me in business that I have two ears and one mouth, and I have to shut up and listen more than I talk. If one is in relatively good shape and they learn the skill to shut up and listen and follow instructions and directions while still trying to be somewhat useful as part of a team, is that enough to be able to climb some of the larger mountains or indeed Everest, or does it take more than that?
I would say it takes more than that. And the reason I'm saying that is because if you can't climb that mountain based to summit on your own, I'm not saying you would solo it, but if you don't have the commensurate skill to do that, and by that I mean navigation, rope management, route finding, resource management, food, fuel, melting
Right.
snow, hydration, all those things. Like you say, you could be a great team member in that you're listening and learning for sure. 2 ears, one mouth, absolutely. But you have to have the commensurate skill to do the job, to be in the arena. You're a civil engineer. Well, I guess you're pretty smart. You're just going to show up with an engineering degree and you're going to do the work now. No matter how enthusiastic you are, no matter what AI augmentation help you might get. No, you need the training and the skill and the learning. So, and I think climbing is the same way. So when I say I'm a mediocre climber, I handle myself well in the mountains and spend a lot of time there. But I also don't want to be delusional of my skin and my skill. Like it's if you have ability that's here, but you have ambition that's way up here, that's a dangerous gap. Now, it's not uncommon to have ability here and ambition here. Well, that's a lovely kind of gap, and hopefully leadership and mentors and those around you, if your desire is there, you could close that gap. But keeping your ambition relatively close to your ability is important because it gets dangerous if you don't.
So
So I think you have to do the proper planning and preparation. I'm saying mediocre. It's like if you and I, you love tennis and you're a heck of a tennis player. You're a brilliant tennis player. You win the tournaments at your club. Okay, we'll go to Paris. Are you going to do well there at the Open? I don't think so. So I
so
guess it's just trying to keep the context of being really honest. I've climbed with some of the best climbers in the world. I am lucky to be not in the arena with them, but on the fringe.
let me throw something at you here, and ties in with what you just said. Nice little segue, as they say. Our company SQM is all about quality, and there's a poster in my office that says quality is a journey, not a destination.
That's for
How does
sure.
one improve, whether it's for business or whether it's for climbing?
Yeah.
Are there a couple skills, any suggestions? How does one improve other than listening? Anything else come to mind?
Well, listening is one part. And while you were asking the question there, I was trying not to formulate my answer because I got to listen to your question fully. So improve my listening skills rather than formulating my answer, which is what many of us do. We're listening, but we're actually just thinking about what we're going to say next. Not good listening. But I knew you were going to throw this pointed question at me, so I was feeling a bit panicky. What's the thing? And you hit it. You said listening, and the word I had thought is curiosity. Maintaining a curiosity throughout the course of one's life. That's why it's the journey, not the destination. Curious, 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 which is often, I think, more difficult as we age and we gain more success and maybe we have more tenure and maybe more title. We're having expectation pumped upon us that we should know. And in a crazy world where it's changing so fast, most of the answers that I give to questions I pose to me are I don't know. I mean, that's the reality of it. I don't know. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't then circulate through my peer group, my life experience, and then circle back with an idea, a take, informed, not just a bunch of baloney or BS, but come back. Now I can build trust and build respect with the person who posed that question because they can realize, he's not just going to make something up. So I don't know. Uncomfortable is a perfectly good answer, but it requires action. So you asked me, well, how do you improve? I guess the first place is that, boy, get used to saying I don't know because it's boy, oh boy, stuff's happening fast. And so, how exciting is that though? So, okay, you're going to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You know, the cliches. Yes, I don't know. Okay, go find out. Circle back, make the priority, build the trust and the respect, bring to bear your experience in your network. That's why, when I'm meeting with people, I don't want to talk about the football score. I mean, it's nice passing entertainment, but I want to know about what books they read. What is it like when they sit down and they have to fire somebody? What are your your kids are out of the house now. What did you learn as a parent? I'm thirsty for trying to find out from other people what they found worked, not just research, but their anecdotal evidence. N of one. What did you learn? So curiosity, I think, is how powerful. I think the other thing too is to give yourself a bit of a break. Like constant improvement's a drag at times. It's like the demand. Always got to get better. Always take a break. Go outside. I've likened this as I call it, and it's playoff hockey time. So it's topical. Zamboni for your brain. What is the Zamboni for your brain? Hockey fans will know in between periods, those big machines come out and they shave the ice and they've got brushes and they lay down warm water and they smooth it all out. And prior to them coming out, the ice is all beaten up from everybody skating on it, especially the pros who cover a lot of distance. It's all kind of foggy and opaque and slow and piles of snow and cuts and things. Zamboni comes out, just makes it mint. Then it freezes up and then the players come back out. Well, if the puck doesn't move a lot faster, think of that as ideas in your brain moving a lot faster. If the effort to get from one end of the rink to the other isn't much less, because your skates are up, they've probably been sharpened in between periods, and now you're flying across the ice that's freshly frozen, like the Zamboni for the brain. So I think it's twofold. We're constantly trying to improve our health and our rest and our recovery and our work and our podcasts and our learning and getting out of bed early and capturing the day and seeing the sunlight and eating well. That's a lot of work. It's a lot. It can be exhausting. Where are you finding places throughout that whole process? Along with learning new AI tools and being a master, prompter in chat, GPT, whatever it happens to be. What's your Zamboni? And don't feel guilty to do it. Is that mingling in your garden? Is that killing some dandelions? Not all of them, because the bees like them, but the ones in your yard? Is that maybe going for a little fish with your friends, taking a walk with your spouse? Is that maybe playing catch with your dog? You're not just doing it because you have to give the dog exercise. Do it because you want to. What a pleasure. And if that dog was gone, wouldn't you miss doing it? Going to the gym. Oh, I got to go to the gym. Whoa. You get to go to the gym. You're so affluent that you have a gym membership. You're capable of your body that you actually get to go and do it. Yeah, I know you've got a rotator cuff issue and your lower back is sore and you can't lift anywhere near you used to, or you're just starting to lift and you feel awkward. You get to go. So I guess there's the answer and another long blah, blah, blah.
Hey, so Jamie, I remember you talking about failure, and I've always been a big believer that for people to succeed, they have to learn to fail. How do you teach people that it's okay to make mistakes or fail?
Oh boy, it's so tough. Failure is such a sneaky thing, isn't it? I struggle with it, still do. You want everything to go well. Who doesn't? It's like to pretend, I'm just I'm immune to failure. It doesn't faze me. Well, then you're probably a psychopath because it's tough. It really is, and there's no way around it. And I guess again, here I am guessing a lot. Because life teaches you've got lots to learn. So in this moment, what do I understand? Well, I understand that failure is very, very difficult, and it manifests it in different ways for different people. So I guess there you go. I guess one is to appreciate that someone else may grapple with failure differently than you do. It's a good thing to note. Why are you even taking this seriously? I wouldn't even think twice about it. So it's different. There are kind of universal things that we all struggle with, but there's also very personal things that folks struggle with in terms of failure. Just acknowledge that. You don't have to know what they are, but as a leader, as just another human being empathetic on the planet, appreciate that. Secondly, I try to look at failure as feedback. That's my little mental dexterity that's never easy, but I'm always trying for it. Failure is feedback. Failure is feedback. What am I going to learn from this? Learn from this, learn from this, learn from this. It's like a mantra. almost, snapping an elastic to interrupt the pattern because I get worked up, I get disappointed, my feelings get hurt. I get defensive. I start making excuses. Oh man, it's just brutal. It's part of our evolution, I guess. We want to avoid it at all costs because failure in the past, and it still is, but hey, don't go down to that watering hole. Went down, bam, hit by a wildebeest. Shouldn't have done that. So we need to learn from failure. Now, if you keep making the same mistakes over and over again, then I guess we got to be honest. I should be the first one to walk into your office with a box with all my stuff. I should be fired. Do I need a performance improvement plan? If only to point out where I'm coming up short, but I got to step up and meet it. So failure is tricky, and I don't think it ever becomes easy. Maybe you get desensitized, maybe you build up a callus, maybe that's just some armor that protects you because it still hurts. But my mantra, when it doesn't go well, which is often, failure is feedback, failure is feedback, failure is feedback. Ask why.
Listen, I love it. We're in the feedback business, and I'm still amazed to this day how many individuals and businesses don't know how to properly use feedback, let alone deal with failure. I wanted to ask you something else. When I heard you speak last time, you were talking about enabling decisions. And I might be wrong here because it was a while back, but you mentioned that everyone owns the decision. However, I've recently heard a few of my colleagues in the business world say that when everyone owns something,
Right.
nobody owns it.
Got it.
Everybody owns customer service, nobody owns it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on that are everybody owns the outcome for sure. And someone has to be responsible for the decision. And I think it takes a little bit of nuance to see the difference. There has to be that accountability, there has to be that ownership for the decision, but everyone owns the outcome associated to that decision. And here's what I mean in particular: you and I are working together on a team. You're the decider in this particular area of expertise, but we're peers. We got it. I got a sense of what this is. Maybe I did your job before, maybe I want to do your job in the future, so I got a good sense of what you're doing. We have a decision. You make it. It's not the one I would 100% would have made myself. Okay, now we have a dilemma. We're going to go forward with this. Now I have a choice. I can kind of not even drag my heels really, but I can just, I can do the work, but not really do the work. Subconsciously, even waiting for the I told you so. I knew we shouldn't have done this. We should have done that. And that's just the two of us. So when I say everyone owns the decision, you and I, we have our discussion. Hopefully we have our trust and rapport. You can take my feedback. You can receive it. I can give it to you. We make a better decision as a result. You make a decision that even then I don't 100% agree with, but that's the decision. I own it. I have to go and do the work to support that decision as though it were my own. That's what I mean by everybody has to own it. And that
Gotcha.
requires leaders to build trust and communicate and have input and understand the command and control, blah, 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 blah. But that's what I mean. That's why everybody owns the decision, in particular the outcome that comes from it.
So I want to flip from business to personal for a minute, or more on not your personal, but your thoughts on this as well.
Sure.
I was talking to my wife the other day, and as you know, she's a big fan of yours, and she asked me to ask you is as people get older, you and I included, they often become more risk averse. And we were talking about that earlier on. How can you still take some risks in your life as you get older to do things that are, dare I say, meaningful
Yes.
without going over the edge?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. And I was funny you bring that up because I'm kind of noodling on this a little bit. Like I remember a time in my life where I'd risk it all. And it's kind of ironic because I had nothing, metaphorically or otherwise. So it was pretty easy to risk it all. But it was certainly sexy, just going for it all in. And there was really nothing on the line. So it was a pretty easy thing to do. Now I'm 57. I got a family, I have responsibility. I have adult children, but I want to be around to help them. I want to hang out with my grandkids when that happens, not for a while, but I wanted to be there. I want to be a great, healthy grandparent. I want to. So, yes. And little tiny risks: fall here, injure your shoulder, 6 months to recover versus 2 weeks, maybe permanent injury. I 100% dig what you're saying. That's the whole courage dance that I'm really working on, to have the courage. And I guess to sort, again, I'm guessing, sorting through the kinds of risks and really identifying them. Am I not doing this because the risk is I don't want to be judged by others? Even though I pretend that their opinions don't matter. I mean, they do because we live in a society. But am I giving them more worry about what they might think of me, and therefore I'm not doing that. Okay, well, that kind of thing I have to abandon fully and completely. I guess we have to sort through the nature of the risk and find the very nature of them. If I do this thing, are we financially ruined and we're going to live on the street? Okay, well, then we need to do some things to repair this so that we can take risks, but we got an emergency fund should it go sideways. All right, am I not doing this because I'm fearful what ridicule and judgment might come? Well, then you're a coward. So I think that's very difficult, especially as we grow in life when we have more, in quotation works, italicized, underlined, and bolded, to risk. Yet we should still find the courage to risk much of it because I believe in that risk is the richness of life.
So, going on from there, I'm kind of curious. I know you have kids. I use the term kids loosely. They're older, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Do you want your kids to be explorers and risk takers? Dare I say, risk their lives? Has this changed as you've gotten older, or as your kids have gotten older?
I want them to do all of that except when you said risk their lives. My definition of risk has changed for sure, naturally. I have my responsibility for them. And I don't want to hide behind that as an excuse. I got to stay courageous and brave and keep moving forward. But I want for them, whatever the vehicle they choose, to pour themselves fully and completely into it. Being cautious in the right way, taking care of the details, living up to their agreements, but also not being held hostage. And I think that's the tendency that we can, tip toward in our own preservation, which makes sense, part of our evolution. Preservation, being held hostage. You're safer sitting on the couch than you are going out into the world. Yes, guaranteed. But do you want to sit on that couch and have a rotting soul? No. Okay, well, there's a balance in there somewhere. What is it for you? And it's different. But think about it, contemplate it, write it down, pursue it, try it, get burned, retreat, try again. I want that for my children 100%. Do I want them to be climbers? No. Thank goodness they didn't have any interest in it. They rebelled. Not a chance in the world. I don't even want them to go downhill mountain biking. I don't want them even to drive. I'll drive you. Yeah, oh no. Get in a plane? No, maybe you should take a train. I don't know. 100%. If I could helicopter, I would, but you got to let them go. You got to live it. They got to make the decisions. I want to protect them. I want to love them up. I want them to be around, but I want them to be happy. I want them to be fulfilled. And that means heartbreak. That means setback and disappointment and anger and sadness. All of the above. That's being human.
What's next for Jamie Clarke?
Oh, well, I'm just working on a new speech. I have a handful of clients who are like, come back next year and tell us another story. I'm like, you probably don't want to hear from me again. So I'm working on a whole new speech, interestingly enough, about leadership and courage. I've got another book in the works. I've written a couple. So hopefully your wife wouldn't mind reading this one. And I've got some more adventures coming up. The window of opportunity is closing physiologically. This meat suit of mine doesn't work as well as it once did by any stretch. But I'm going to sneak in a couple more because old habits die hard. I'll be off to Nepal in the fall of 26 for a couple of big climbs. So climbing, a book, and hopefully just out there preaching the gospel. And most importantly, loving up the family and taking care of the people.
Interesting. Well, listen, while we first met years ago, every time we chat or I hear you speak, I end up jotting down notes and things that you say that I can apply for my personal or business life. And even after the last half hour, 40 minutes or so, the wheels are turning again. So I guess we're going to have to do this again. In the meantime, it's always great chatting with you. And thanks very much for the ideas and inspiration. While your information is going to show up on the screen, tell everyone how they can contact your business.
JamieClarke.com. There's a contact me there, some form to fill out. It'll get to my desk sooner or later at Jamie Clarke, JamieClarke.com.
Perfect. And we'll put up the spelling of the name as well. You decided to sprinkle some E's in over there.
So. Yeah, it's JamieClarke.com. There's a place to reach me there. And then LinkedIn. I don't use a whole lot of the socials because I find the platforms a little weaselly at different times. I get too easily distracted. So it's great stuff on there and then lots of stuff with some holes to go into. But LinkedIn is kind of a powerful tool just for, hey, shots across the bow, staying connected. So between JamieClarke.com and LinkedIn, I'm out there.
Perfect. Absolutely amazing. Thanks, Jamie, on that note, I want to thank everybody for watching another episode of SQM Picks. Since we're always on the lookout for companies and individuals that provide outstanding customer service or are fantastic in their own way, if you know of anyone or any businesses that you'd like to nominate, please send an email about the business to sqmpicks@sqm.ca. Thanks again for joining us, and look for another company or individual to be featured on SQM Picks shortly.